Hello, this is Professor Minton, and we talked today about um, amortization schedules and payments and so forth. And so I just want to show you how to create an amortization schedule, and so you can kind of follow along if you choose to do so, and it'll give you an idea of how this whole thing works. So I'm going to make some assumptions here. And the first is that I'm going to start on January of 2021 with a beginning balance of 200,000. Let's assume that I'm buying a house. And let's, for argument's sake, just to make it simple, let's say that the interest rate is 6% per year. And if it's 6% per year, that means that 6% divided by 12 gives you 0.005. That is the interest rate per month. Now you can do it a couple different ways, but since that's an easy one to work with, I'm just going to use the 0.005, which is 1/2 of 1% per month. And if you multiply that times 12, you get 6%. And so now what I need to do is I need to calculate what my payment is going to be. And so, and I'm going to put it right up here on this line and make it an absolute reference so I can use it going forward. And so let's come up here and you have a little FX. Now, I know the parameters for the payment function, but you probably do not. So the easiest way to do it is to click on the FX and then come down here and you would type in, it's already here by the way, but I'll show you how to do it in case it were not. You just type in PMT and go, and it'll bring you up with the PMT function, which stands for payment. And then click on OK. And you have three dialogues that you have to fill in. And so for the rate, I'm going to put in 0.06 divided by 12, which will give you that 0.005. For the number of periods, typically these days people buy a home for either 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. And most often these days it's for 30 years because of their expense. And so if you're buying it for 30 years and you're making a payment every month, you have 360 periods. That's, by the way, the reason that I divided the 6% by 12 so that you have it down on a monthly basis. And then the present value in this case will be the 200,000 that I have up here. And that'll tell you that your payment is $11.99.10. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. Now you notice that that pops up as a negative number. Well, for my purposes, I prefer to have it as a positive number, just easier to understand. So I'm going to go to the end of the string for PMT, and I'm going to just make it times -1 so that I've got now a positive number. Okay? So here's my payment stated as a positive number instead of a negative number. All right, so my interest is going to be 0.005 times 200,000 every month. All right, so equal 200,000 times 0.005. And that gives you the interest payment on your first month, January of 21. It gives you an interest payment of $1,000. So your principal payment then is going to be equal to your total payment, and I'm going to make that as an absolute. And the way you do that in Excel is by the function plus 4 or F4, depending on how yours shows up. Mine shows up as an FN down at the bottom, and then you have to hit the F4 at the top after you've indicated it's a function. And then, so this number here, the principal number minus the interest number. And I'm just pointing to those. So that tells you then that your principal for the first month that's coming off of your beginning balance is 199.10. The other part of this is interest. So the ending balance then, by definition, is going to be equal to your beginning balance minus your principal that came off that month. That gives you your ending balance. And you can almost kind of do this in your head, but you see that it's about $200 and this is about $200. So you know that that's right. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put the ending balance equal to the beginning balance here. So I'm just going to say equal and point to my ending balance. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these three and I'm going to drag them down one cell. Okay. And now you notice here that I've got 200 coming out and I'm going from 199.8 to 199.6 plus, plus a few pennies. So that gives you that next number. This is going to be your February. Now, Excel is happy to take this number right here and assume that the next in the series is going to be February. So if I come down here and just make this fat cross here, a skinny cross, and point at this little square down here in the bottom right, and then just start dragging down. And in this case, I started on row 2, so I've got to come all the way down to row 361. Takes a little bit to get there. All right, so 361. And that tells me that in December of 50 is when we'll actually have the place paid off. Okay, so now all I have to do is come over here and grab this whole group, all of these, and then just drag them all the way down. Whoops, went a little bit far there. And you notice that, and by the way, this just means that I don't have enough, the cell's not large enough. So if I double click in this little area here, that'll tell me what my number is. Notice now that this is in 30 years later, 360 months later, and my balance is now 0, which is what it should be because it's being eliminated. Now, also notice, if you will, and I'll kind of come up here at the top so you can see. Notice that every time what happens here is your interest is dropping. Not very much, but it's dropping. Okay? And every time your principal payment is going up, 200 to 201 to 202 to 203, and like that. Okay? And as you go down through here, you'll see that that's happening every month. So your interest is dropping each month and your principal is going up. And so if we come down here, if just to kind of give you an idea, when we hit, looks like right here, when we hit July of 2039, it's at that point that you're paying more in principal than you are in interest. Okay? All right, so let's come back up here at the top. This is an amortization schedule, and then this tells you the amount of interest that you pay each month and the amount of principal. Since this is your payment, and if I know that I'm going to be paying that payment for 360 months, that number times 360, that'll tell you the total number of payments that total amount of interest and principal that I'm paying. And since that's the case, notice that that's a pretty big number. Here's the beginning balance on the house. Okay, so therefore, if I look at the 200,000, and I probably should put that in as a negative number so I can just add them. Oops. Come on, Randy. Minus 200,000. When I do that, if I add those two together, the difference here is 231, and that's your interest. Now, let's think about this for a second. What would happen if I were able to pay this off in, call it 25 years, okay, instead of 30 years? So that would make it 300 payments, not 360 payments. And if I do that, then my payment goes up to 1288. But then when I look down through here, if it did this what it's supposed to do, if I look at this now, if I take this number times 12, times 300. Now you notice that I only paid $186,000 in interest. Okay, and that would be the case, um, as long as you're willing to pay a little bit more. So if I go to 240 months, and then this number here, of course, is 240 now. And now you see that my interest again is dropping. So instead of paying whatever that was, 400 and some $1,000 for my $200,000 home, now I've only paid 343,000, which is still significant. Okay. Um, and the difference was, if you'll remember, that was about $1,200. For another $200 per month, I've reduced my interest payment over the course of the loan very significantly. And if I could go even further down, if I could go down to 180 months, which would be what, 15 years. I don't know if I can get my thing to work right. And now change this down to 180. Now you see that again, the interest drops very significantly. My payment goes up. The original payment was 1,200, roughly 1,200. Now for an additional 500 per month, what's happening is I've dropped my interest from 200 and whatever that was, 243,000 or something, to 103,000. And the total amount of my outlay is now only 303,000 for my $200,000 home instead of over twice that amount when I had the longer term. So what you're doing is you're sacrificing, when you go out further in term, you're getting a smaller payment, yes, but you're also paying considerably more for the home before you're done. So um, that's really what I wanted you to see here for that. So thanks for your attention.